Hi, in this section, we're going to discuss experimental design and ethics. And essentially, when we start to conduct a research, we have to ask a question, right? We have to be able to understand the intent of our research. And that could be an observational study where we just want to know the average number of times a student eats pizza in a week, right? Something really simple, to something experimental where I use a cream for acne and I want to see if it works on everybody. And so then you have to think about, well, what age group do I want? What gender do I want? And how often do they apply the cream? What can I control? What can't I control? Because I can't control them using every day. And so it ends up being really involved when you have an experiment. So let's just go ahead and take a look at that and how we build that. So the first thing we want to talk about is the difference between an observational study and an experiment. So an observational study is a study based on observations or measurements. How tall are you? The subjects are doing is essentially answering a question of an attribute that already exists. So you're not asking them to change anything. You're not asking, if you want to do an observational study of what is the average length of worms in my backyard, you are not going to go feed the worms a bunch of food or soil or compost and then do measurements, right? Because then that would be an experiment. You're conducting a treatment. Observational studies is solely taking your subjects as they are and answering one question. So it's collecting a bunch of worms in your backyard and then measuring them. That's it, in their own natural environment. What is the average height of students in a Calculus 1 class, right? That you're not asking students to get taller, right? They're just how tall they are, and then you measure. So an experiment says you're going to apply a treatment to a group or to the entire subjects in your study and see what occurs and see if there's a difference or not, or if there's an improvement or not. And that's just much more involved and usually a lot more expensive. So observational study just is based on your subjects and what already exists in those subjects. An experiment is you are going to apply a treatment. So let's go ahead and determine the scenario for each. So here we have a weights of 30 randomly selected people are measured. So think, was a treatment given? Did I give them diet pills? Oh no, you're just asking 30 random people. Okay, that's observational. Okay, part B, subjects are asked to do 20 jumping jacks and then their heart rates are measured. Did we ask the subjects to do something before I observed them or asked them a question? Yes, I asked them to do jumping jacks and then I wanted to know their heart rates. So this means this is an experiment. Okay, and the treatment is the 20 jumping jacks. And really, you're just asking yourself, well, did I make my subjects do something before I observed something or wrote something down or asked them a question or not? So 20 coffee drinkers and 20 tea drinkers are given a concentration test. So if the 20 coffee drinkers and 20 tea drinkers are given a test, are you asking these coffee and tea drinkers to do something? Yeah, you're asking them to take a test. And whatever the intent of your research is isn't implied here, but we are just taking specifically two types of drinkers of tea and coffee, and we're applying something to them, right? We're making them do something first, right? And that would be taking the test. So this would be an experiment. And the treatment is taking a test. Okay, however, because we have experiments, and let's go back to the acne medication and you want to see that it worked. Are you going to be with your subjects every moment of every day to make sure that they are eating right, drinking enough water, not touching their face, applying the cream exactly the same every day? No. Right? So a lot of these experiments, especially with medications, is usually telling people the plan and allowing them to go out into the world and cross your fingers that they're following the plan. Are they? Probably not, right? I mean, there's days off and sometimes they get, they forget or whatever and they're not following the schedule. So those are other factors to take in consideration when you're doing an experiment. So we have to consider that there are other factors in which maybe students or people in your study are getting acne. What are some of those things, right? When people have acne, it's usually genetics, right? Internal hormones, right? Also, some people break out with certain foods. If it's too citrusy, they can break out. So, peanuts, the oils in peanuts, the way they're cooked. So, we have to talk about those things. So confounding occurs when there are two potential variables that could have caused the outcome, and it is not possible to determine which actually caused the results. When one variable causes a change in the other, we call the first variable explanatory variable and the affected variable the response. So for example, let's say in the acne medication, I give the topical and I say go use it for 3 months, once a day, every day, before you go to bed or in the morning. And you come back in 3 months and you say, wow, my chin has cleared up, right? And what was the cause of that? Well, the explanatory variable would be the cream, right? Because you're applying that treatment. And the response is the satisfaction and the reduction of acne, right? So we would say that a certain portion of the topical acne medication explains the improvement of acne, right? So we like that. We like good improvements no matter what kind of scenario it is, right? So let's look at an example of a drug company that claims people lost an average of 8 pounds while using a weight loss pill. What could some other variables that cause the weight loss? And is this confounding or why or why not? So, weight loss is always the greatest thing to talk about when we're introducing experiments because we see those ads and we see them on TV, we see them in magazines, and we're like, wow. But if you ever read that small print, like that super fine where they don't want you to read and they make it like font -8, you'll read that it says results will vary. These results are unusual. They had good diet and good exercise. So they don't really want to advertise that there were other factors that were involved with the success of taking that diet pill and that weight loss, right? They want you to think it's only the pill or the shake that caused the weight loss. But really, there's so many other factors that come into weight loss, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and list some of those factors. So what are other factors that come into weight loss, right? Not just the shake or the pill, right? We know that diet has a ton to do with it. The other part is exercise. Okay, so those are a couple of factors, definitely. And the other question was, are these factors confounding? Meaning, is there more than one thing happening with the weight loss where it's going to be hard to narrow it down that it was the weight loss pill, even though it may have contributed, but is it? Yeah, so there's the weight loss pill, there's diet, and there's exercise. How do we know it wasn't the diet itself that helped, that did it all, right? How do we know it just wasn't the exercise that the body needed, right? So definitely yes. Are these confounding? Yes, because we don't know whether it was the pill right? The diet or the exercise. that contributed to the weight loss. So we have to be careful when we're doing experiments because we have to be able to identify what's working and what isn't, and to eliminate confounding. How do we eliminate? It's almost impossible, right? Well, that's why we want to break out the subjects in the study. We don't want to give everyone in the study a weight loss pill. Why not tell them take this pill, which could be like a fake pill, right? We call them sugar pills or placebo. Here, this group, I'll give the pill, and they all think they're taking a weight loss pill, and we tell them all to fix their diet, all to exercise. So all of them are, we assume are all going to have good diet and good exercise, but give half of them maybe that fake pill and the other half the real pill, and see if there's weight loss change. Now, if there is no difference in weight loss and they're both exercising and eating right, then we know the weight loss pill isn't going to work, right? So it's really important to take your subjects in your study and split them up into what we call the control group and treatment group. And so the control group would be the group that you can control that's not really getting a weight loss pill, but a fake one. But they don't know that, right? And then the treatment group would be the actual group that receives the actual weight loss pill. And then tell all the confounding variables that we found, like diet and exercise, tell them to do it. Say part of it is you have to diet, you have to exercise. That way you eliminate, all of them are doing the same thing. And the only thing isolated and change is the fake pill or the real pill, and then you can tell. Okay, so the experimental unit is everyone in the study, right? And then the placebo is the dummy, and we call a placebo pill if it's a pill, placebo effect. So what happens sometimes is people think they're taking the pill and it's a placebo and it's working. And so this person takes the placebo weight loss pill, it's a fake one, right? And they lose 80 pounds on a placebo pill. Well, what does that mean? That means that it had nothing to do with the weight loss pill. It had everything to do with that person's exercise and diet. And so a placebo effect is exactly that. When a person or a subject in your study takes the placebo and the experiment works, right? And or thinks they work, and that's the placebo effect that it can have. And then the an experiment that gives the control group the placebo is called a placebo-controlled experiment. Okay, so let's go ahead and determine a placebo for each scenario. It's not always a pill form, but sometimes it is. So this one would be what we talked about, right? A new study for medicine that's dispensed in pill form. So we would just go ahead and use what I had mentioned before, like a sugar pill. So I would definitely just use like a sugar pill, right? And then make sure it's the same color as the treatment pill, right? Because the point is to not have a placebo effect, right? We want to make them look identical. How about a study on the effect of alcohol on memory? So you would give one group alcohol, right? Because then you're going to probably do some memory exercises. But to split them up to see if alcohol makes a difference in memory, you need a group what? That's right, to not have alcohol. But then how do you trick someone to think that they're taking alcohol? I know some of you know because you drink alcohol. Yes, non-alcoholic beverages, exactly. So if you gave someone a beer, let's say in a green bottle, then give O'Doul's, which is a beer, and just kind of fake the label out and make them think they're drinking a real beer, but it's actually, O'Doul's is actually a non-alcoholic beer, right? So the placebo would be a non-alcoholic beverage. Okay. And then a study of a frozen meal diet plan. You know this is South Beach. Everything's frozen, lean cuisine. How do they know it works, right? I wonder. So how did they do that? Well, they can't just give everyone it and hope that they're all going to eat it, right? Like, so we need a group that thinks that they're eating it. So what could we do, right? So we're going to give the treatment group the actual meal plan, right? But the placebo group, we're going to have to give maybe a non-dietary frozen food. You know, like pasta and stuff. Okay, so let's keep going here. Let's go ahead and now let's try to do an example. So researchers want to investigate whether taking aspirin regularly reduces the risk of heart attack. 400 men between ages of 50 and 84 are recruited. The men are divided randomly into two groups, one that will take the aspirin and then one takes the placebo. That makes sense. Each man takes one pill each day for 3 years. He doesn't know what if he's taking the aspirin or placebo. And at the end of the study, researchers count the number of men in each group who have had heart attacks. And we're going to go ahead and identify the population sample, experimental units, explanatory variable, and response variable, and treatments. So we already can see that we are being really specific in our age group. And really, these type of medications do take years. If we want to go ahead and look at the population, what is the population? Okay, well, I do know I took a sample of 400 men, but so then what would be remember the sample is a subset of the population. So the population would be all men in this age group, right? So we would say all men in age group 50 to 84 years old. Okay, so then we would say the sample is the 400 men, right, the subset in age group 50 to 84. Okay, and then the experimental units, remember, are the subjects in the study. So that would be, who are the subjects? Are they male, female, rabbits, crickets, pennies, right? No, they're men. So the men in the study. And so the explanatory variable, again, will explain the outcome. I'll give you a second to think about that. What is the variable that would explain a reduction in heart attacks, right? What will reduce the number of heart attacks between the ages of 50 and 84? You're like, oh, well, they're testing aspirin. Exactly. So the explanatory variable would be the pills the men are taking. Because remember, some of them will have the placebo. So this means that the response would be what? What is going to be the response variable? What is going to happen if they take an aspirin for 3 years? Right? The number of heart attacks. All right, and then what are the treatments, right? And we kind of already talked about that. The treatments are, well, the pills, right? What are the pills? So the pills would be an aspirin, that would be the treatment. And then the other one would be the placebo. Great. So you could see there's a lot going on here. And we could even talk about what type of variables and what type of data. Like we could do a lot more, right? So, but you can see there's a lot to conducting an experiment. There's a lot more work than observational studies that just go ahead and ask a question, take a measurement, right? Okay, so a blind study is when the participant doesn't know who they are, what they're taking. So, for example, in the diet pill experiment, the groups wouldn't know who's taking the diet pill and who's not, right? Because they both should essentially all think that they're taking the weight loss pill. Same with the men between 50 and 84 years old, right? They are all taking aspirin, even though a group of them aren't, and they're taking placebo. and the other ones are taking aspirin. However, because if it's a self-interest study and you work for an aspirin company and you want your aspirin to work, it's going maybe may it it's going to be and may have bias. And that's okay because as long as you acknowledge that there could be a self-interest bias, then what you could do is expand your blind study, which is only participant doesn't know and I don't know, is a double blind study and says, you know what? Instead of knowing that this is Frank from Queens, New York, why not just label them alpha, beta, or a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6. Why not put a number to them? Make them so generic as people so you don't have any self-interest bias of whether or not your aspirin will work or not. So the best way to conduct it, especially when you work for the company you're doing the research for, which happens a lot, every company, pharmaceutical company has their own lab and research, right? So in order to make it as objective as possible and as a good research is to do a double-blind study, which includes the researcher and the subjects that don't know, right? So then the researcher would probably hire some assistants to do the kind of meet with the client and subjects, and the researcher won't know. All they get back is the data. Okay, so to test a new lie detector test, two groups of the subjects are given the new test. One group is asked to answer all the questions truthfully. So one group is the truth, and the second group are liars, right? They're supposed to lie. And why would they want one to tell the truth and one to lie? Well, because they want to test a new lie detector test. So they need to be able to determine if when people are lying that it detects that, and that way we know the machine will work well. Okay, so the person administering the lie detector test does not know which group each subject is in. Does this experiment have a control group? Is it blind, double blind, or neither? So the first thing, let's go ahead and answer, does this experiment have a control group? And remember that it's a lie detector test. So essentially when you take a lie detector test, what should you be doing? Should you lie? No, right? You should be telling the truth. So with the lie detector test, the control group would be the one that's status quo, no change. Go ahead and tell the truth, right? So the control group would be the truth group, as I call it. Which means that the treatment group is what? The liars. And then, is this blind, double blind, or neither? So think about it. If it's just blind, that means the subjects know that they're being treated on, or the researcher knows who's being treated on. Double blind means the participants don't know if they're lying or telling the truth, and the researcher doesn't know either. Well, in this case, they're telling a group to lie, so they know they're the lying test. So they know what they're supposed to do, and therefore they are the ones that know, but the person administering doesn't know, right? So this means it would be single blind. So it would just be blind. And we could say because the groups know whether to lie or tell the truth. Okay. And here's an extra video if you want to go ahead and look at more about experimental design. I have those links in the video. And the last thing we want to just mention here is just ethics. We want to make sure that you're doing something ethical to humans and you're not saying, oh, does this pill cause cancer? Here, humans, take a bunch of pills that can cause cancer. I mean, that is so unethical, right? So we just want to make sure that if you conduct something that can cause harm onto people, determine the level and make sure that there's a code of ethics and make sure it's legal, safe, and sound-minded for people. I think that it's very hard to conduct scientific experiments and research, especially on medication. I can only remember when I was pregnant, I had acne because of the hormones and I couldn't take anything. And there was only like one antibiotic in the entire world that pregnant women can take to reduce down the hormone that causes the acne during pregnancy. And the reason I was like, only one, and the only reason for that is because the companies are not going to give antibiotics to pregnant women who are growing humans in their body and have them say, oh, let's see if something happens to your baby and they grow a third eye. They're just not going to do that. So that's why sometimes there's just a limited number of medications for a certain area of need, because it's just not safe to do those type of experiments. So we just want to make sure that it's always abiding by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And there's also research institutions that establish an oversight committee. So if you want to be published and you want it to be public, and like the CDC to approve it and the FDA, there is institutional review boards out there that can review, and they just want to make sure that the risk to participants are minimized, participants are given informed consent to what the study is, being honest about it, and the data collected from individuals protect their privacy, because that's really important, especially on sensitive subjects. Okay, so that's experiments, and I hope this helps.